Japan's defense ministry has requested its biggest ever budget for the next financial year as the country eyes the threat from North Korea and China. It's asking Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for some $50 billion despite a pacifist constitution that bars it from maintaining a military force. Tokyo has increased military outlays by 10% over the past 7 years. For more, let's get some insight from Grant Newsham. He's a senior research fellow in Japan Forum for Strategic Studies. He joins us from Tokyo. So, Grant, rising threats from North Korea and China, enough in your eyes to justify this ballooning budget? I mean, it comes despite Japan's pacifist constitution.
I would say so. I think using the word ballooning is probably not the right word. It's actually just a marginal, almost illusory increase. It's best to compare the budget where it was 15 years ago. When Mr. Abe took office, the Japanese defense budget had been reduced every year for the previous decade. So Abe has just made these very small increases that are getting the budget really back to where it was, or a little bit above where it was, say, 15 years ago. So it really isn't much of an increase when you actually look at it. But Japan is, they're worried about North Korea and China. But they still just can't bring themselves to spend what they need to spend.
So do you think that they should be spending more?
Oh, definitely. They're pathologically dependent on the U.S. for their defense. You'd probably have to increase it by 10% a year for the next 5 years to get it about where it needs to be. And then really Tokyo tends to blow the money on expensive weapon systems, whereas its capabilities are not what they should be. And also the state of the Japanese self-defense force, the actual terms of service of the JIECON, of the troops, are not very good. The JSDF defense forces have missed their recruiting targets by about 20–25% each for a long time now. So it's got some other problems that it really needs to deal with.
And those are quite significant sort of numbers, 20–25% missing its targets, in part, I suppose, due to sort of the population aging, and they don't have so many young people that they would perhaps be relying upon. But they are sort of trying to sort of compensate with this with purchases of equipment, as you said. Is that perhaps the only way they can do it, though, by using high tech?
No, actually, I think that if they didn't make it, they could make service in the JSDF an attractive profession. But they just refuse to spend the money on that, and until they do that, there's really no hardware solution to it. You will find that there is a tendency for Japan to almost buy what they think are magic weapons, silver bullets, very expensive high-tech weapon systems that they seem to think are going to intimidate or scare off their enemies. But where they have some basic shortcomings, that the Japanese Air Force, Navy, and Army cannot conduct joint operations together. They can barely communicate with each other. They don't even have a radio with which they can easily talk to each other. So there's some fundamental problems that expensive high-tech weapon systems are not going to help to solve. Japan does have some good niche capabilities, particularly in the Navy. But overall, its defense is not at all what it needs to be. I don't know what it is going to take to wake them up.
And do you see that their budget increase for their military, how is it going to affect their relations with their neighbors then? I mean, if you're painting a picture that it doesn't seem that impressive at all, do you think their neighbors will be seeing it in the same light?
Oh, no, it doesn't matter what Japan does. The Chinese will complain, the North Koreans and the South Koreans will both complain. So there's really it almost doesn't matter what they do. But as noted, Japan is very heavily dependent on the U.S. To backstop its defense. And that's been going on 60 years. Japan has gotten used to it, and even a lot of the Americans did. And it's really only in recent times that there's been an awareness that Japan needs to make more of a contribution to the bilateral defense, and not just a financial one, but it really has to improve its capabilities. But as I say, North Korea and China, they'll complain. Japan could surrender tomorrow, and you still get the same complaints.
All right, many thanks for your thoughts this evening. Grant Newsham, Senior Research Fellow at the Japan Forum for Strategic Studies, speaking to us from Tokyo.